Well, hello, I'm Alone of Finland. This is EVE Online, and this little bit is going to be a bit of a discussion because some interesting things have happened in the gaming space, as some people may know. And I think it's going to have something to do with EVE at some point in the future. Now, the first one up is Runescape. If you don't know Runescape, nice little game, massive multiplayer, been going on for a while, and it's, well, at the moment it's shit. It is so full of microtransactions that its player base has been leaving. It is actually generating more profit than it has previously, however it's generating it from less people. And if you don't understand why I'm talking about this, EVE Online is at its lowest player count since 2005, but at the same time it's generating more money. Now that's a bit of a problem because obviously if your player base is shrinking eventually, well, they'll disappear because they'll die. Like, life is short. And EVE Online's player base has gotten older and older, and I think this is a problem that has been noticed because of the fact that this isn't spoken about anymore. A couple of years ago, this was actually the age of the player base, the amount of players, how many accounts people had. All of this was sort of brought up in the yearly fan fest and in conversations, but more recently in the last few years, especially since the sort of era of yield plague, it's not been spoken about that much. And I think what's happening with RuneScape is sort of a very good sign of exactly what's going on within the gaming industry, but they will actually force CCP to do something. Now, if you don't know what's going on with RuneScape, they have actually admitted that this is going on, and they have decided to make changes, and they have said, to literally quote one of the mods, they have quite literally said, "I want to be emphatic on this. We will see reduced revenue from MTX, and we have total support to take this hit." So RuneScape's corporate owned, so it's owned by an investment company. The sort of same as CCP is. CCP now has lords above them. They have had for many years, and that's where all of the emphatic monetization was coming in. And what's happened from RuneScape is they have had such backlash because of this that they've actually started to pay attention and realise that it's going to become a problem. So they are changing it so that short term they lose money, so that they are going to take a hit on their financials, but that means that longer term they're going to try and get people back into the game. Now, this I think is something that's very important, because if you've got a company that's doing this, at least one company that's doing this in the gaming space, that's usually a sign of change. But I also want to bring up something else that's going on, and I've sort of got this to the side if you want to have a look at it. This is the Ubisoft, what they actually call them, the official Universal Registration Document and Financial Report, right? And this is the stuff that they put out every year to talk about their things, and they're talking about, in it there's a lot of mention of risks and things like this, and this is the other end of the spectrum. This is a gaming company that just denies reality and doesn't want to sort of show any of the stuff that's going on there, and is essentially trying to portray good things to their financial backers, as opposed to being honest and trying to change to make it better for the gaming community, therefore better for like sales in the future. So they are placating the corporate owners as opposed to placating the customers and getting more things. And it doesn't sort of get better than, let me just find this, there was a little passage that came in where it was sort of talking about the risks right at the beginning. I've highlighted it here. And it says, failure in development and launch of a video game, the business risks. In a highly competitive environment where players are very sensitive to the quality and content of games. Just that sentence all alone, let me sort of rephrase that. Imagine this wasn't a gaming company we were talking about. Imagine this was a company that was making baby milk for children. And they said, well, these mums are very sensitive about what they put into their kids. Well, yeah, because it's the product you're selling. It's supposed to be top quality. You are a AAA gaming company. You are supposed to be making the best games. That's where all the revenue and the money comes from. That's why you can charge 80, 90 quid for a game, and people will pay that because it's supposed to be the best. And it carries on to say the success of a video game depends on I cannot speak today. The success of a video game depends as much on the efficiency of its development process as on its launch. Well, that's not correct. Now, the efficiency of its gaming development is true. You are going to require to make things in a timely manner and get them out the door. But when it says on its launch, it's sort of skimming over the fact that if it receives a bad launch, that's because it's a bad game. There has never been a game that was good in every criteria that failed its launch. It's that sort of thing of it goes out there and it does what it's supposed to do. It's a game. If you've made it good, it will be well received. If you've made it bad, it will be negatively received. And that's sort of an interesting sort of corpo speak way of putting it out there and saying, well, it's the launch could have been problematic because of factors we couldn't control, like putting out a shit game. Or I have an absolute hatred for Ubisoft, and I will not hide it, because they've released was it Assassin's Creed 3? When it was released, it did not have the ending in the game. The ending was in DLC that came out 6 months later. And I only found that one game after, when I was playing Black Flag, and I happened to be watching videos that were, advertised for the Black Flag stuff, because I'd had a look at some of the things, and all of a sudden outside Xbox comes up with, games where the endings had been hidden in the DLC. And I was having a laugh, and I was watching it as I was playing, and then I realised that, hold on a minute, that's why the ending for Assassin's Creed 3 didn't make sense. Because I played it on launch. I bought it on launch. I bought it for full price-ish, probably. And I got a game that was incomplete, that was sold to me as incomplete. And since then, I've played Black Flag. I have not played another game after that, because that's when I realised I've not put any more money into Ubisoft since then. Because that is, in my opinion, sort of beyond the pale when it comes to evilness. Is hiding something behind a paywall so severe as the ending. So these are little things that royally sort of pisses off and annoy people, justly and understandably. But there's a little bit further down in this, which I think is just a perfect example of a management structure that is disconnected, there it comes again, that is entirely disconnected from reality when it is talking about what's happening. So for this little bit here, under risks and internal control, there's the bashing section, and it says identification and description of the risk. Ubisoft is exposed to risks to its reputation resulting from online bashing, understood as massive, sometimes virulent and organised campaigns of criticism against its products, teams or statements. What it's not putting in that phrase is the justification for those. There is understandable justification. You don't put the ending in a fucking game, people are going to be pissed off about it. If you release something that is so monetized that you can't reasonably make any progress through the game without spending more money on the game you spent 100 quid on already, then it is understandable that people are going to call you out as shit. And it doesn't need to be an organized campaign for it to be en masse, because a lot of people getting the same results will be pissed off. You can see this in politics, on every side of politics, where a whole load of people get to campaign together, but there was no organisation. They were all pissed off at the same thing, and usually understandably so, regardless of spectrum. So it says these campaigns may occur in social media, obviously, content distribution platforms, well, that's Steam reviews, and certain specialised media, particularly following strategic decisions. Strategic decision is a marketing way of saying, well, we put monetization into this, we wanted to make more money off of it. Strategic decision is a way of covering up and saying, we fucked up by being greedy as shit. Or technical issues affecting the games. In other words, they weren't finished and they were broken. Or statements perceived as controversial, like for instance a CEO coming out and basically saying that gamers shouldn't want to own their games, that it's disgusting that they should want to own their games. Perceived as controversial. Saying that you don't own something you buy isn't perceived as controversial, it's controversial. And by the way, if I don't own it, it ain't theft if I download it illegally. That's the sort of thing. If you're saying that you don't own something, you are justifying piracy in a big way. And I have no problem with somebody pirating a game from a company that has that attitude, where the CEO has that attitude. I think I would stand up and say, for anybody that has that I don't have a problem with them screwing with that game, with them pirating it, with them breaking the servers, with them doing anything, because at the end of the sort of day, EULAs haven't been fully tested, and if you're saying I don't own the product I bought, well, congratulations, you can't touch me for the EULA, because that's binding for a purchase. So, with all that being said, by the way, not legal advice because I'm stupid, but with that being said, the way that it relates back into what's going on with CCP and with EVE especially is the fact that the entire sort of... Hold on, I need to cough really badly. You may have noticed that I have a bad cold by how deep my voice is. I apologise for this. But anyways, the reason that this sort of links back on EVE is because we are now getting to this point where young gamers, where sort of your 18 to 24 year olds, your apprentice level into gamers, are actually being bombarded with so much as kids that when they get the power of purchase themselves, they recognise this as bullshit behaviour. They take a look at FIFA and realise that they are spending money on a game, but that game will be shit until they've spent 200, 300, 400 more quid. They understand how much money they have, how much money they bring in, and the fact that if a game isn't decent, if you spend another £500 on it for something that you've already purchased, that is just ridiculous. Now, this is something that is a problem for CCP, because the entire reason of bringing in the alpha tier is that it was a demo. So that was the sense of it. They didn't want to refer to it that way, but that's what it was. It was, you get this early access, you get most of the features, you can see how the game works, you can see if you can like it. And a lot of people sort of now, because there's been so much free-to-play nonsense that's been put out there that is just wanking for coins, and they don't understand the fact that they are paying to play these games, that, oh well, I don't have to play it, it's free to play. How many skins have you got? I've got 17. How much battle pass currency did you put in? How much did you spend on this, that, or the next thing? They've spent more money than they would spend on a normal AAA game to just sort of maintain at that same level. Like, for instance, Battlefield's battle passes, they change the content, but you only get the new content if you actually spend money on it. You can grind for that over time, but you're going to buy at least one of them. So that's where these things are a bit of a pain in the arse, and it sort of shows through in that client base when they look at games like EVE Online and they go, well, why would I want to pay 15, 20 quid a month to be able to play the game? It's like, well, it's a different type of game. It needs server support, it needs to generate money, and there are legitimate ways of doing that, but there are also exploitative ways of doing that. And this is my main sort of issue with some of the devs, because I watched a particular dev stream where they were talking about all of the sort of wankerishness around about the new skins. And they were saying, well, it's good for this, you can align with a corp, you can look like this, you can all fly together, and everybody can recognise your ship as this. Now, I'm actively in this game at the moment. If I'm flying a ship where I'm able to see everything on the battle space, I cannot see the skins. So saying that I'm going to recognise a fleet by that as opposed to the ticker next to all of their names, that's just fucking horseshit. And the fact that these guys know this, they play the game, they understand the game, they know that it's wank bait. As opposed to going out there and just being honest. Look, EVE needs monetization. We have tens of hundreds of thousands of pounds in servers that we need to upkeep every month. There is a lot of people working on this, there's a lot of people creating new content. All of those people need to be paid, so we want to put in revenue streams that make you feel like you've gotten something. Maybe you want to colour all of your ships the same. I personally quite like the black and white splish, and maybe it's a case of you want to be able to put in a bit of plex so that you can put in 20 hours worth of work into something by trading money for ISK. That's completely understandable. Putting that stuff out there and being completely honest with it is fine. There is that many people inside the game, and I've just had quite a lot of time down in down in Poshvin, where I am looking at, at one particular point there was 7 separate Vargar fleets on grid with me, and I was cloaked and shitting myself because I was ninja looting. But 7 separate Vargar fleets, each one of them was one guy controlling them. I could see the conversation in local, and I'm looking at this going, so there's 7 people here, but there's over 150 ships. And this is sort of, if you've got that amount of ships, that amount of sort of processing power and that going into the game, you're not paying for Plex. You can generate enough in the time that you're in the game so that you don't need to pay for the game. So at that point, the alpha is kind of useless because they've put in money, which they have spent money on it, but nobody's paying for monthly upkeep. They're generating it from the game. However, with that being said, these people are all skinned up, so they are generating Plex. Now, they might be buying it, they might not be, and I do know a lot of people that generate a phenomenal amount of income in-game that don't need to pay for anything, but they still do. Another break for death. But the problem is that this is a shrinking ecosystem, because those people are the reason that other people sort of can't exist. As a new solo player going into Poshvin, you can bounce through Poshvin at the moment. It's fairly quiet, and I literally did one the other day where I went all the way round, and although I passed a few ships, nobody tried to gank me or any of that jazz. But when I did see big groups, those big groups where you were not even going to run from them. Somebody actually managed to lock me down at one point where I was locked, I was scrambled, I was doing this, so I was sort of 15 off of the gate, or 10 off of the gate coming in, but unfortunately I had no way to get to the gate in the time, but I was tanking, so that's a case of what can I do? And just, oh, that was a big one, my throat's coming out. So it was just, I'm just going to take the loss. There's no chance of getting through this. I've made a mistake. I think I was dragged off by a bubble or something like that. But either way, there is a no-win situation. And it wasn't something that was particularly avoidable. If you were going through that way, obviously you can avoid it if you don't go into dangerous areas and stuff like this. But there's this other side of it where you do get people that can sort of exist as sort of solo flyers that can do their PvP off in their own area, but that's not the side that's sort of shown, and it's not the side that's the most popular. If you look on YouTube, you get people spending a lot of money, or some of the YouTubers that are sort of, I don't know, that are being promoted, that are showing up in my feed an awful lot, look like the kind of fuckwits you get that are selling Bitcoin, that are saying, oh, this new cryptocurrency is going to be the most amazing thing in the world, and you know that it's going to pump and dump in a split second. And you get people talking about Plex in the same way. Oh, if you invest in this, you're like, you know, you sound like an arsehole to everybody listening. What the hell is going on? But these are the ones that get promoted over the likes of I was going to say Evil, but I think I read that name wrong. There's a few of the smaller guys that do more interesting things. Before I actually jump and search for a few of them, I know that Amy, this is Amy on YouTube, is somebody who does small PvP, like solo or stuff like this, that is absolutely fantastic. I've been watching for a little while. I had to pop back into my YouTube to actually look at the names. So Evil, that's Eveil, and then Aceface are two guys that do an awful lot of the small gang, the solo stuff as well. That their stuff doesn't seem to get promoted over the tops of some of the others, but they're very good for the smaller players. And they're sort of shouted out by the fact that you've got oh, you can fly this ship into PvP, and you're looking at something that costs over 10 billion. That any new player is going to lose in an instant, but because you can buy it, it's sort of ignored, and because those guys are getting the clicks and the likes, that's what's sort of promoted, and in some cases that's what's getting put onto the bloody Twitch, CCP's own Twitch, where you're sort of going, really, that's who you want to promote? Okay then. But that's my sort of 2 cents on it. I think that this is now going to be a time where Eve is going to have to get, or CCP is going to have to look at how they're doing their monetization, because their monetization being as toxic as it is, as in your face as it is, and not being honest from the devs, that's something that puts off gamers that would play the game. There are people that wouldn't play the game because of the way the game is. Everybody likes different things when they have games. I have a massive amount of all sorts of stuff all over the place. Just bringing it up right now as a little bit of sort of examples. So these are the games that are all installed at the moment. I've got Cyberpunk, Death Stranding, Horizon, Independence War. By the way, if you don't have this game, it costs almost nothing. Currently it's a £5. On sales it drops down to like €1 and something. It is the game, the Independence War and Independence War 2 are the games that got me into playing even in the first place back in 2003 through 2005. Then Kerbal Space Program, Space Engineers, I don't know why Rust isn't installed, Stardew Valley, Void Crew, and then you can see the other ones that are sort of not in the favourite things. So you've got the likes of Fallout, Earth 2160, which is RTS sort of tanky thing from donks ago, Far Cry, FTL, Hard Space Shipbreaker, which is weird, Metro Exodus, through Hitman, and all different types. Sable is something that is very artsy if you're into that. But these are the type of games that I personally like, that I jump all over, and there are some games that are very similar to the genres that I don't particularly like. So if you've got somebody who has eclectic taste, they might like the game if it's advertised in the best way. There was a particular video that somebody did. Right, this is one. EVE Online, no other Destiny. So this is Black Summit Empire, and it's a song called Arrakas, and your man made a trailer. I know I'm talking over it because of the whole thing, but go and have a look at this. It is, as you can see, 18 years old, and this was the first time where somebody had decided to take some of the music that's a little bit different, so in this case some drum and bass, or now sort of known as EDM, and throw this into an actual EVE video, so that we were looking over the big stuff, they were showing off all of the stuff, and it actually had a very big impact on the game at the time. That particular video got a whole load of views, but the views correlated to a massive jump in subscribers after it was released, because before that everybody doing stuff for the game was like doing spacey stuff and sort of slow trance and all of this jazz. When they were doing any videos online or any advertising, it was always that sort of distant, quiet space stuff, and this was where somebody put in something that's impactful enough to give you the same sort of feeling as the adrenaline surge you get from combat in EVE. That adrenaline surge, which might be lacking for some people these days, because back in the day when you were risking a battleship, you were risking 3 months worth of work. It was something you'd put a lot of time into, but this is something that is, it's sort of lacking in the way that they portray it nowadays, where it's not portrayed in an honest sense, it's portrayed in that sort of corporal wank sense. Whereas if you come out and you're just blatantly honest, completely honest with people, like saying, we have made a new Titan because the people that are buying the Titans and people that are flying the Titans are the people who spend thousands of pounds a month on our game, and we are catering to the people that put actual money in because they buy phenomenal amounts of plex to do a whole load of stuff in their corporation to get it done faster, as opposed to putting in all of the time, although they might actually be putting in time as well. If they were to come out and sort of say where and why, and that's the understandable, and that allows you to do other things, I think that's completely valid. It's also the reason why I don't think that the alpha tier should be taken away, because a lot of people come out with that thing of, we should get rid of alpha. Now, if you lived through the alpha ganking the first time and you saw the vast majority of the people that you played with leave the game because they were getting ganked by people who had never put a penny into the game, then you would understand why that needs to stay the way it is, because it's a protection thing against trolling. Because if people can troll, they will troll. There is always that sort of group of people out there that enjoy or sustain themselves on the misery of others, and we have that in game, that's what pirating is. That's what that sort of side is, and I've been part of that myself in my time. But at the same time, if you allow people to do that with absolutely no negative consequences, which is part of the reason I think that it should be looked at again when it comes to stuff in high sec, then if people are doing it with no negative consequences, they're going to keep doing it. If you don't punish somebody for a bad action, they will continue to do this. And I've worked with young offenders and things like that in my time, where they have sort of been getting away with something for years. Say for instance, you'll hear about the mobile phone thefts in cities and stuff like this, and one of the kids that I worked with who had been put in a chair because he had spent 3 years stealing mobile phones and shipping them off to some other guy who was shipping them abroad, and he was scot-free. He was making something like 200 quid per mobile phone that he stole, and it was all fine and all good until he came across the wrong guy one day. And as he tried to steal the phone, he got knocked to the ground and the guy curb stomped him. And he literally was left with a broken jaw. The guy genuinely curb stomped him, all of his teeth out, broke his jaw, and then on the second hit him in the spine hard enough to shatter his back. So that he never walked again. And when I met him, he was in a wheelchair and he would never regain that. And that was because there had been no punishment, so he just kept doing this nasty thing, and then eventually it had this negative consequence. Now, for people going into games where there are no negative consequences, there is still a negative consequence, it's just not for them. The negative consequence is for the game. So the game isn't sort of policing this, therefore people get to run wild and this becomes a problem for everybody else. So that's something that has to be looked at. But I think we are at that pivotal point where it's about to start coming, because Eve is in this situation, and I've been talking about it for years, where players are down but money is up. However, that's never a sustainable method, because eventually players drop off completely. And for Eve, that might be in 10 years time, that might be in 15 years time, but as it comes up to that, the amount of players spending the high amount slowly become the only players. And this is something that is, there are so many things to do in Eve that it's such a good game for so many people. But the point is to try and broaden your interest without souring what is here. A funny example of this right at the moment is 7 Days to Die. 7 Days to Die, for those of you who don't know, is a zombie survival game. It is essentially Rust, but in its original zombie form, and then mainly solo player. You can play it multiplayer, but it's built for solo. And in its original form, it was particularly aggressive. So when you were into it, it was a difficult game. It was something that was challenging. And over time, they've essentially nerfed the game to make it more appealing to more people. The problem with doing that is they've soured it for the fan base. And more recently, they've released a big update for it, where they did a couple of things at the same time, which were the worst possible things they could do. They removed some stuff that a lot of people really enjoyed and relied on within the community, i.e. trying to make it easier for others. They included more linear progression, which if you're trying to railroad somebody in a sandbox game, they're obviously going to get pissed off. And then simultaneously, they almost doubled the price of the bloody thing on Steam. So they're like, oh well, it's better now, let's try and get more money, as they are hemorrhaging money. They are not making more money from sort of consistent buyers to the game, because it's not subscription based. So they decided to start bleeding the last buyers for more money, and it's just resulted in them getting review bombed. So they've had to answer that. And this is something that, while Eve doesn't exactly get review bombed in the same way, if you look, you can even take a look at most of the comments in my older videos when I'm talking about this stuff, you will see the amount of people who agree with it. And you know that for everybody making a comment, there's at least 10 that don't. So if you're looking at the dislikes to not the dislikes to the likes, but the unhappy comments about CCP versus the happy comments, when you are looking at sort of niche outlets as opposed to the evaboos that are sort of locked into all the guys that are, yes, I make all of this money and all of that jazz. If you're looking at that area, that's where a lot more of the sort of the truth of the outside view comes through. And that's something that I personally think more people should pay attention to within the company, within the game. Because that's your audience that was disillusioned with it. If you can win them back, then you're the winner. You're bringing more people back into the game, therefore you've got more money there for other projects like Eve Frontier, like what is it, Valorant, the first person shooter. I'm quite interested to see. I like jumping between first person shooters and Eve. Half of the time when I'm doing mine, and I'm doing it on my second computer while playing a main game on this one. So it's those sort of interlinks I think are a good idea, but I also think that the lack of input from the community, the lack of input from more distant voices has always been a problem within CCP. And it comes across an awful lot in the dev streams where you hear people saying, well, this is the reason. And there was a genuine comment where one of the devs, you can look back on it in the CCP VODs, where one of the devs said, it's because the player base doesn't understand. And I'm sat there just looking at them going, we understand exactly what you're fucking saying. That's the problem. It's that you're so fucking arrogant. You're dismissing the point of view by saying somebody doesn't understand when they're clearly articulating the point that you've just made and why it's wrong. That's just... I just don't understand. I truly don't understand how you can get to a position within a gaming company where you think that you know better than the rest of humanity, when you've got external sources that have all of the different experience in the world, and when you yourself have been proved wrong repeatedly, when you have made decisions that cost people their jobs, when you have made decisions where you've seen large chunks of your player base just fuck off because they weren't happy with it, and you're sat there going, well, they don't understand. Just fucking do one, Boyle. Really. I wonder if I'll ever get a CCP sponsorship. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to put out there. It's very interesting times that's going on, and I thought I'd do this. Now something, and this is actually because of Amy, because she popped back, I've seen her years ago, but she's popped back into my algorithm recently. And if you haven't seen it, Amy is doing a video, or 2 videos I think, where she's taking out this little heron and just absolutely ripping stuff. And this is my absolute favourite type of PvP, because small frigate PvP doesn't cost much, you don't lose much when you die, and it's so much fun. And the fact that that's sort of out there and being advertised, if you haven't seen her already, go and have a look at the stuff. It is just brilliant. If you have seen her, go back, have another look. But I'm going to be doing a bit of this for a laugh for a while. I might film it, I might not. But I did manage to go, and this ship is actually returning for me, picking up a whole load of blueprints, so that the stuff that I've actually managed to get out of abyssal space, that I can do some PvP with those things, because I'm kind of curious about it at the moment. So with that all being said, thanks for watching. There's my 2 cents. As per usual, likes, dislikes, all of that jazz, I don't really mind, but I do like to see comments. I like to see opinions and stuff like that in the comments. So if you do have the time to leave a comment or stuff like that, I am very happy to hear your opinion, especially if you disagree with me. As per usual, always be polite. Be polite, be polite, be professional, and have a plan to kill everybody you meet. But always be polite in the comments, because we are all people at the end of the day. But even if you disagree with me, I would really want to hear from you, because I like having my opinion sort of challenged, because, well, that's how you get a better opinion. So thanks for watching. Bye.